I am so excited to have one of the greatest leaders I've ever met in the podcast for the next few weeks. Dr. Mark Rutland is a world-class leader who was a CEO of a global missions organization, a megachurch pastor before it was cool, the president of Southeastern University, where I met him when I was receiving my bachelor's degree there, and he went on to be the president of the Oral Roberts University during their much-needed turnaround. He and his wife, Allison, have been incredible influences in my life, and I'm so excited to have him on The Person That Everyone Needs. Well, I am extremely excited to have Dr. Mark Rutland on The Person That Everyone Needs today. I can't imagine anyone be more special to have as my first guest, and so I just want to welcome him. Thank you so much, Dr. Rutland, for taking the time to greet my audience.
Thank you, Pastor Webb. I'm honored to be asked.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, as one of my favorite topics I've ever heard you talk about is David the Great, David the King. My focus has been on Jonathan, and so I wanted you to just kind of walk us through, knowing David the way you do, what contributions do you grant Jonathan in the person of David?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and Jonathan is unfortunately overlooked in the story. He almost seems like a prop in David's play. But really in the whole story, including all the people involved in it, Saul and David and Michael and everybody that's involved in the whole thing, Joab, for Pete's sake, he was a killer. And all of them, Jonathan is really the most admirable. A man of sterling character, a military leader, bold, courageous, and loyal. Beyond all that, Jonathan had a quality that is really indispensable in the edification or upbuilding of another leader. So to your question, what part did Jonathan play in David's life? Jonathan's discernment that David was really the choice of God. I want you to think what kind of humility that took.
Right.
Saul was the one that was the psychotic nutcase, fearful of David's taking the throne. If it should have been anybody, it should have been Jonathan.
Right.
David was never going to take Saul's crown. He was in a place to take Jonathan's. But Jonathan sensed somehow, really, one hesitates to use the word, but prophetically, you're the guy. It's you. Israel's waiting on you. So everybody needs somebody in their life who, maybe they don't say you're the next king of Israel, but they need somebody in your life who sees something in you that maybe you don't even see.
Wow.
That is humble enough to want your life elevated, to want your career promoted.
Wow.
And that was Jonathan in David's life.
Yeah.
Beyond that, a second thing, Jonathan was not only discerning or prophetic with David, he was generous.
Yeah.
So the covenant that David and Jonathan struck, I think everybody's aware of that. And that's why David cared for Mephibosheth later on.
Right.
But what did David bring to the covenant? Nothing. So in the covenant that they struck, there should have been an exchange of some kind. So, like if you and I struck covenant, you would give me your watch, and I would give you a ring.
Right.
Well, David doesn't have anything.
Nothing to offer.
Nothing to offer. So Jonathan gives David his robe and his bow and arrow and everything, symbols of his authority and power and position. He hands them over to David, and he says, this is yours. This all belongs to you, and it'll all come to you someday. So everybody not only needs a friend who sees good in them, but's willing to invest in it.
Wow.
The generous approach of Jonathan is really, really remarkable.
Yeah.
And he's loyal to David. He defends David with his own father. He refuses to believe the things that his father says. And then the fourth thing is he risks his life with David. A lot of people miss this. Saul not only tried to kill David,
right,
he tried to kill Jonathan. So is the kind of friend that sees more in you than you see, who is willing to invest in your success, who is generous with that success, and who so aligns his life with yours loyally that he's willing to run the risk that you run, face the danger you face. That's the kind of guy everybody needs in their life.
Yeah. Wow.
And so seldom finds it.
Right. There's a couple of things you mentioned there. I've recently heard a message by you where you talked about types in the Old Testament of Christ, and I was thinking covenants, usually, like you said, there's two parts, but Jonathan made the covenant with David. David had nothing to offer, nothing, and there was three covenants. There was one that he said, your life will be better than mine. And then he said, your family is over mine, when they separated and David went on the run. And the third one was, your throne, I'll serve you on your throne.
Right.
It just kind of reminds me of how Jesus, the Holy Spirit, is consistently offering the promise more than it is a covenant. I have nothing to offer Jesus back.
It's a covenant of grace.
Yes.
There was no equal swap.
Right.
It was a covenant of grace.
Yeah, that's powerful.
So you're throwing the idea out of Jonathan as an Old Testament type, so which is an old-timey idea. People don't talk about types anymore, but it appeals to me. So in this sense, one specific sense, he is a type for Christ, Jonathan, and that is a friend that sticketh closer than a brother. That's Jesus.
Wow. Yeah.
But David's brothers were as suspicious and jealous of David as Saul was. They didn't try to kill him. But you remember when David came up against Goliath, David's older brother, he says, I know you and the naughtiness of your heart. So he brings an accusation against David, and he doesn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
And David responds, he says, what have I done? Is there not a cause?
Right.
Is there not a cause? I'm just fighting. So Jonathan's friendship is better to David than the brotherhood of his own siblings.
Wow. And that's the same day.
That's the same day.
Eliab, right?
Yeah,
it's
Eliab.
the same day that Jonathan recognizes the greatness of this young man and offers him his own clothes and everything.
That's right.
Wow. That's incredible.
It is.
You said the word discernment. Can you unpack that word just a little bit? What does that mean to you in the Holy Spirit gift realm?
The gift of discernment it's like so many of the gifts. I'm not 100% sure when it's pure. So part of discernment is wisdom and experience. You know, you could say, look, I touched a hot stove one time. I discerned that's not a good idea. You do that again. You can pick up on personality types, people, experience. And so you say, oh, this person has the same weird, creepy thing that this guy had. So some of it is just experience, knowledge, just miles on your odometer. But I'm actually talking about something beyond that, a spiritual awareness, either of something bad, which is the way people usually use it. Particularly in the New Testament, it says don't trust every spirit, but test the spirits.
Test them, yeah.
And so people talk about the discernment of spirits. And you will often hear people in teaching about it say to, test the spirit and you discern this is not truth. But what about, to me, the more difficult witness or manifestation of discernment is to discern something really positive about somebody, something maybe not just positive, but something almost prophetic about somebody, that there's not really some clear reason to see it. You must see it in the life of Christ with Nathanael. As Nathanael approaches him with no previous experience, I mean, it's easy to say, well, it's Jesus, he knows everything. But Jesus says, behold, a true Israelite in whom there is no guile. So he discerns this witness of Nathanael's inner spirit.
Yeah.
And Jonathan, in a remarkable moment, discerns not only something about the character of David, but almost his whole future, his life, at some cost to himself.
Right.
I mean, it's really actually pretty astonishing.
Which is like Barnabas with Paul. Yes. Ananias has a word of knowledge. Go to this man, lay your hands on him. And he's like, I don't want to. This guy's a murderer. But Barnabas befriends him without... He knows his background, but he's willing to even put his own reputation on the... Yep. So that there's a natural element of experience, and then there's a supernatural that you're talking about.
Right.
That,
and they flow together, Webb.
No doubt.
That's what I was trying to say. I don't know that sometimes it might be just a pure supernatural thing.
Right.
But a lot of times, I think we bludgeon our sort of instincts. Mm-hmm. If something makes you feel creepy, as I said, pay attention.
Right, yeah.
By the same token, when you have a teacher who has a student and you just sense there's something in this one, this one's different, then pay attention to that too.
Yeah. What great insights from Dr. Mark Rutland today. I hope you will tune in again next week as we discover the person everyone needs.